Everyone dreams of living an uncommon life, and the best asset you have to achieve your dreams is you. Welcome to the Uncommon Wealth Podcast. We're going to introduce you to people who are living uncommonly. We're also going to give you some tools and strategies for building wealth and for pursuing an uncommon path that is uniquely right for you.
Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Uncommon Wealth Podcast, where I'm your host, Phillip Ramsey.
And I'm Arron Cramer.
Thank you for tuning in. Today we have an interesting topic. It's just Arron and I hanging out, and we've been talking about this concept, and we've seen it, we've witnessed it, and we've seen how powerful this can be.
Yep.
You ready for this? We're talking about failures.
Failures, being human.
Being human and failing.
Yeah.
And we'll just start by saying we're going to talk about our failures.
Yeah.
And the things that we feel like we could have done better in our career or in our life.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, some of these failures are the biggest reasons why we are who we are today.
Yeah.
Now, that can be shaping us in the positive or the negative. I feel like Arron and I are kind of bent on, like, okay, is it a failure if you've really learned from it and you've come out of it on the other side?
That's what makes it really hard to think of these things. 'Cause,
I know. So we both had some time to think about our failures and exactly what they are and how do they shape us in who we are today. But when you're thinking about this, think about this. Like, if you were on the podcast, you have the microphone in front of you, what has been your biggest failure? And then what has it produced on the other side of it?
Yeah.
Whether it be a trial or failure, we can talk about a lot of things. But today we're talking about failures, the times when you're like, I could have done better.
Could have done better.
And because of me not doing X, I didn't do better, and I feel like I failed.
Yeah.
Now,
or change the trajectory of something.
Change the trajectory of what it could have been.
Yeah.
And I kind of keep thinking about all that. So that's what we're talking about today.
This is
failures. Uncommon wealth.
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right. So I'll go first because mine's like a bigger, like, not bigger fail, but it's like fresh. Because I just realized it, like, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 months ago. But it's not as good as Phillip's.
Wait, so why? Why did you think about it in that way? And like, why did it take that long? Like, what made it come to the top of your mind of like, huh?
That's a good question. I was talking to a mentor of mine, and he told me, like, I had really bad boundaries.
Okay.
And he said, Arron, good people will even take advantage of another good person with bad boundaries.
Okay.
And I was like, huh. And then I went and told my wife this, and she's like, yeah, Arron, you have this issue. And I was like, oh. And it came out, and my first realization through this is I'm like overly loyal. To the point where, like, I'm loyal, and I don't put people on a pedestal, but I'm like, they're there, and I'm like, I've got them. Like, I got their back. I'm going to ride or die, kind of like. And then through that, like, being like, talk about our superpowers and stuff. Mine's more like, just like making sure I like being the dark horse for somebody else.
Protector.
Yep. And so I always put, like, the team first.
Yes.
And so
I can attest to that.
Yeah. And so then it's like, okay, so then what hit me is like, I started thinking about my entire life. And I think that's when I had my big, like, oh my gosh.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah. So first one was like football. I was pretty good at football. I'm not saying like never going to go pro, nothing like that. I was just good high school football player. Could have probably gone to the next level. But like, I was my sophomore year, made varsity. And I was pretty good defensive end. Like, It was fun season. Like, and at the end of the season, I got letters from like D1 schools coming. I was like, sweet.
Yeah.
But then the team needed me at middle linebacker. And I remember, dude, when you're 16 years old, like, you don't understand things.
Nope.
But like the defensive coach, coordinator guy, his name is Hutzel. He's an amazing dude. Sat me down. I was like, hey, team needs you at middle linebacker. But if you want to stay, I got your back. Like, I get it. And I'm like, no. Middle linebacker. My dad was even like, middle linebacker, oh my gosh. Because it's like playing quarterback on defense.
Really is. It
right?
really is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, you got to be really smart to play quarterback or play middle linebacker.
There's a lot going on.
Dude, I didn't even know plays. Like, I didn't play Madden or anything like that. I sucked. Like, I say I sucked. I was all district and stuff because I was an athlete.
Right.
But no,
it wasn't your jam.
No, everybody, like, I never got negative yards on the running back. They always had a yard because I tackled so many people. They're like, dude, I don't have the ball. I was like, well, you tricked me.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
So, but the team needed me there. So I went there. And so I gave up my opportunity for, like, where I shine the best, you know?
Yeah.
So then.
For others.
For others.
Okay.
So then.
This is good.
So then come to wrestling. Like, wrestling was like, okay, wrestling. And that's the sport I picked to go into college for. Like, I got told, like, hey, we need you at 215. Like, I was a small 215 pounder, but I was the stronger of the two of us, of the 189 pounder. Mm-hmm. Now, I would have done a lot better at state if I went 189. Oh, and so it's like, oh, man, flash forward again. But the team needed me at 215.
Yep.
So even like the year then we went on to like my next year in high school, nope, I stayed 215 because the next guy was better at 189. And it was like, poop.
Dude.
You know, so I stayed there again. Go to college. This gets even more interesting. Like, and how being young and dumb and not listening to your mentors even is.
Keep going. Because people were telling you, like, don't do this.
Now I went to college, they did.
Okay.
So my mentor, which, if you follow wrestling, I knew Eric Volker and he was in my ear, and Eric Volker is one of the best of all time collegiate wrestlers.
Like, awesome.
And he told me, and my head coach for wrestling told me, don't go heavyweight.
Oh, interesting.
And you're like, okay. It's like, and they said, like, I remember Eric telling me, he's like, you'll lose your best asset. And I was like, okay. Did I think about asking him what my best asset was? No. I was young and dumb.
Gosh.
But what happened? Coach needed someone at heavyweight, and I was putting weight on pretty good, like, and I was strong. Went heavyweight.
Okay.
If I would have stayed with a 97 pounder, like,
You would have been
it would have been so much different.
Wow.
So you're like,
another thing.
I failed to like do what's best for Arron, you know.
Yeah.
And so anyways, so that was college, and then you get into the professional world, and again, I stayed at a firm way longer than I should have.
Right.
And because, like, again, I'm loyal, and this is what we're doing, like, pushing forward. And I even make my family suffer more because it's like of the loyalness.
Right.
Because I don't step up and do what's best for
you.
Arron. And like, and this is where you start feeling selfish because you're like, I don't want to be selfish, but sometimes there are situations where like what's best for you will also be best for the team.
Yes.
Right. Because like, if you think about it, if like I was like, I'm not saying I was, but let's use the football. Like if I was a D1 compatible at defensive end and D3 middle line, like I'm going to shine way better for the team at the D1 spot. Right. And so I should have fought for myself.
Wow.
But I didn't.
That's a good one.
And so now like, it's like, having healthy boundaries is like a bad one. Like I love the quality of being a great team player and doing what the team needs me to do. But there is times where you just need to like set your boundaries and like, no, like I got to do this for me and really think through it. And that's what I'm trying to learn to do now. Like it's really shown me like, oh, it's a great thing. It's great quality. Like so it's not like a really bad thing, right? Like I'm doing good things and good things have come from it. But like at the same time, it's like, dang it, like trajectories could have been way different.
It's so true.
So having good mentors, asking good questions to intrigue and ask why, and then also thinking through like what's good for me, but
be the best for the team could be the best for me.
Yes,
it's like in a different mindset, different perspective.
But like not just doing like, but then like we tell our kids to like be coachable, do what's good for the team. Like don't be selfish. And I was doing all those things, you know. Now, could have anything changed? I don't know. It's always easy to look back and say,
oh, if I would have done that.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to be that guy, but it is interesting when you find out it's like, no, you when your wife tells you, other good mentors tell you like, no, you have bad boundaries.
Wow.
You're like, dang it.
Yeah.
I need to work on, and then you realize it and you're like, I need to work on this. Mm-hmm. And it's not change big things about myself. I just need to like,
just know
critique it.
Yeah. Right.
You know?
Yeah. We have another podcast coming up, so I don't want to talk about it too much. But when your best quality turns into like your biggest weakness.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So don't talk about it anymore.
That's a good one. I'm excited for that one.
But Okay, why are we talking about this? Because it all matters, and we're talking about uncommon wealth.
Yeah.
Like, this actually really matters. When you start thinking about how you're wired or what your tendencies are, your superpowers, it all affects your life. And your life and your money and the way that you manage and the way that you do things, and the way that you organize. It all matters.
Yep.
So that's why we're talking about that. So, okay, through that, what do you think, like, your biggest thing that you're going to now do? One, now you're aware of it. And two, this haven't been too long ago that you were aware of it. So now you're like trying to process through, okay, how do I not do that again? Or how do I put boundaries up in order for me to be able to succeed? And if I can succeed, then maybe the whole team actually succeeds more.
Yeah. You know, that's interesting because we're like, team-wise, I think, like on the home front, you know, being more cautious of that, like looking out for my family and making sure they don't take hits.
Yep.
But like on our front, it's hard. Like I feel like everything's good. Like everyone cares about everyone. We're a small team,
right?
Like it's not we're this big organization that's taking advantage of people, right?
Right.
In my opinion, like because I think bigger organizations, it's really hard in our industry. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to get paid, you know.
That's right.
But when we're in a small organization, like everyone has value and everyone deserves to get paid, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is, you know, again. I don't know. That's the fun part about this. I know I had a big failure, and I wish I had this big resolution for it, how I got through it. Like, I'm in the middle of it, guys. Right. Like, here I am. I'm like, I don't know what's going to come from it. I'm figuring it out.
It's funny because when I think about mine, I'm like, I don't know if I have a resolution either.
Yours is kind of fresh too. But yours is even bigger than mine. Like, it's a bigger life lesson than mine.
Yeah. So one thing that you need to know about me is I really like to have hard conversations. I like having tough conversations. I just do. It's super quirky. It's not necessarily I like to have those, but I like that we can just address the big elephant in the room. And then once we address it, are we going to be friends or are we not? And if we're not, then we probably shouldn't have been friends at the beginning, so let's just have this conversation.
Yeah.
Right? And if we are, then we're going to be better friends than we were.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say one of my biggest failures is just a failed partnership with Brian.
Yeah.
I'll just say it right out. And that to me is hard because I'm a very loyal person. I've always wanted to be on top of the mountain with somebody next to me, looking at the panoramic views and being excited. Now, what's the top of the mountain, you'd ask? I don't know, but I want to be there with somebody when I'm there.
Yeah, okay? It might be a hill or maybe Mount Everest.
Right. That's right. And so from a very, very beginning of our relationship, I just felt like there was some pretty big warning signs of like, we're not that compatible in a couple areas that I feel like could be important.
Yeah.
And I just squashed them, which is fascinating because and Brian would have hard conversations with me, but I'd have very hard conversations with him. Like, hey, this is something that I feel like is a blind spot. We need to talk about it.
Yeah.
And the poor guy never really wanted that because I think he didn't have a brother growing up or sibling.
Yeah.
And so like it was all new to him. And I was like, well, I feel like this is my lot. You know, like I have to be the guy like, hey, might not be the best, or, you know, hey, I saw that. And he did that, I think, 4 or 5 times in our whole relationship. And every time I was like, oh my goodness, like, I shouldn't say every time, because sometimes it was like, oh, that was hard to hear. But I know a couple times I was like, I had no idea, like, that I said that joke and it didn't hit with the people and it actually offended them. Like, I had no idea, right? And so when he said it, I was like, oh, I got to go say sorry to them. And like, it was good, right? Like, it was refining and... but I felt like I was doing that a lot, and I was just in the back of my mind being like, this is not going where we need it to go. Together, you know, like, and learning from each other and challenging each other and things like that. And so that's probably been one of my biggest failures is like knowing when to trust your gut sooner. Yeah. Like, this isn't going to work, and we just need to call it what it is before we get too far down this path. Yeah. And so to me, it's like, trusting your gut more and then not worrying about the fallout or the consequences. That's the hardest part for me because I'm always thinking of, okay, one, they're a person, you know, so like that's going to be something. Luckily, Brian found a great opportunity, so he moved on. But like other people, I do think about that of like, okay, what does it look like outside of whatever we were trying to create together? Does that make sense? Yeah. And so to me, but it's circumventing that and like making a decision faster because I've heard this like, what is it? Hire slow and fire quick. Or something like that. And like in theory, I think that's the right business model, but it just doesn't feel uncommon And so I want people to have grace with me. So I extend grace to other people way more than I probably should.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's kind of like it's a superpower, but it's also a weakness of yours.
Yes.
Again, like a boundary issue. It's like,
Yes.
oh, I'll just help you. Like, you know.
Yeah, right.
But then like things can go wrong, and then you're like, dang it.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Many times I do.
Yeah.
And so one of my biggest failures is just trying to figure out like, okay, when is it time to like really trust my gut and like, no, hey, something's just not right. And maybe we can't resolve it, or maybe grace doesn't need to be extended to it. Just maybe we're just not in the same trajectory going forward.
Yeah.
And maybe you're trying to climb a different mountain when I'm trying to climb this mountain. That's okay.
Yeah.
But we need to address it quick, and then we need to try to just do something about it.
Well, and especially if someone like, I mean, having insight on this one, it's like when the other person doesn't want to put in the work or have the hard conversation, right? Like,
Yeah, right.
Because like it has to be an equal partnership in having that conversation, and there has to be like,
Right.
I heard you. I believe you. Like maybe they believe you 25%. Like, and no one's ever 100% right when they call you out, but there's some sort of validity there. If there's a total ignorance,
Right.
then like how do you go? You can't grow from it. You can't have a partnership
tough,
there
right.
because you guys are kind of so different in areas.
We were way
right?
different, right?
And so, but then like that's the hard part too, because like then you want to have grace, extend grace.
That's right.
But then like
That's right.
also you can like in that sense because you are such a gracious person, it's like you could probably trick yourself. Because like I think there's me and you are like we're vastly different in certain areas,
Right.
But we complement each other.
That's right.
To make it better.
That's right.
So it's like,
And you know what? Out of the two, if we're just talking about this relationship, out of the two people, the person that probably extended grace more was who? Out of Brian and I.
you.
No, I think it was Brian.
You think so?
I think it was Brian. One, because he didn't bring up many of like, you know me, I'm flawed.
Yeah.
So out of 10 years, you're only going to come to me 5 times and say that I messed up. Like, come on. There was more than that. But he never brought it up for whatever reason. Probably because he wanted me to extend grace to him. And I was always like, hey, we need to have a conversation. And he's like, I don't want to have a conversation. But anyway, so that's fascinating
like,
to think about. But like, I
is
think
it grace or is it being a chicken shit?
I don't know. But I would say that he was very gracious with me in many times.
Okay.
So I always wanted to just extend grace. But so to me, that's kind of my bent. I'll also say too, something that I found out that is maybe a superpower, but also can be a failure, is I'm super authentic. Whether or not you like it or not, this is who you're going to get.
Yeah.
So like if I'm on stage, if I'm on a panel, if I'm in front of you at a coffee, or if I'm just like by myself, this is who I am.
Yeah.
I'm going to be authentic. And like, I'm struggling with high blood pressure. Here we are.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what? Like, yeah, that's true. So
I said join the club.
yeah, right. Right. So how do you work with that? And I think there's some times where I'm too authentic. And like we've had this example recently where like I want to be a good business partner to everybody on the team. Like 'cause now I don't really have that business partner. I feel like you are super close, and at the end of the day, all of our team, like we're all partners.
Yeah.
Here. So that's how I play. And then there's been times where it's like, well, maybe that wasn't the wisest thing to do. Maybe I just need to talk to Arron about that one. Right?
Yeah. So I mean, you do like, there's just that times where it's like, you want too inclusive, right. But like, I mean, I know that's the fun part through all this is like you learn from it, right?
Yep.
And you got to grow from it, but like you find out these areas of like, I got to navigate that different. But like,
oh man.
But again,
right.
That's why it's really hard to like think of these things, especially like this. I think it's funny that you brought this one up because it's like, to me, I'm like, it's just a growing moment. It's like
right. And I would say that I feel so much better with going through that trial now. But now I don't want to make that same mistakes twice. I don't want to keep going back in this rut of like, I'm in the same mistake. I'm in the same decision. Like, and that's what I really respect about you is you're always constant. Like, I want to get better. I want to get better. I want to keep learning. I want to keep getting better. And so it just seems like no matter what the failures are, and you can probably think about that in your life, listener, but like you've become a different person because of it. And that different person is probably better.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to get better is by going through these trials and like the furnace.
Yeah.
And in that, you're going to produce a gem.
Yep. But like, this is the thing. I know we always hear people doing this, and I love this podcast because in the subject But what I want to make sure it's super clear to our listeners, like, it was not fun hearing about me having bad boundaries.
Yeah, no. Right.
And then realizing all the things that could have been possibly different. Like,
oh, sure.
That's not a fun thing to hear.
Replaying your life and like,
yeah, you're like,
oh man.
Oh, you mean I could have had a totally different shot at like playing at a higher level, or I could have done better at the level I was at? Like, what? I had big goals. I didn't reach none of them. I wanted to be a state champ. Didn't. Like, I wanted to be a national champ. Not even close. You know, like, I made varsity. That was it. You know, it's like, oh my gosh. Like, so it's just one of those things where it's not fun to hear. It's not fun to hear, and it's not fun to accept it. Like, so that's why, I mean, guys or listeners, guys and gals, like, if we say walk through the fire, right? You become a gym.
Right.
Put your hand in the fire.
Yeah, right.
You pull it away.
Right.
So, like, now you're talking about emotional fire, like, you're going to pull away. It sucks.
Right.
But I promise you, the other side is so much nicer.
Yeah, and I do think there's a self-awareness about this too. Like, there has to be a place where you have to internalize what just was said to you.
Yeah.
Or if you hear or see somebody going through something and you're like, whoa, I need to learn from that.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to do that. And I see tendencies. I would say parenting is a really good example.
Yeah.
You start seeing your kids start going down the same path you did, and you're like, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating that you have to internalize. And I think that's what you're really good at, Arron, is like, I can do better. And I'm seeing somebody else's failure, and I can put myself in, like, I could see myself doing that, versus people are like, oh, I'm too good. I'm too good. I'm perfect. Like, I'll never go through that. That isn't the guy. That's not the gal.
I know. And it's funny, like, and that's like where I was like, you know, like, maybe, I mean, I'm glad you sit there and say I'm good at that. I really just think it's because I fall a lot. Because that's like, you see these people that have like success in the beginning of their career or whatever, and everybody has a fall, right? And so, and a friend of mine and a client of ours, you know, like, she said one time, it's like, oh my gosh, like, I'm glad I'm having my falls now than later, because everybody has them, and longer you have to wait for them,
the harder they're going to be.
Bigger they are. If I got to fall from the mountain, I want to fall from the below, like, the, you know, towards the bottom.
Yeah,
I ain't falling from the top, because I don't, like, that would hurt.
Oh yeah,
you know,
that's good.
So, like, for the listeners, like, no matter where you're at, like, I mean, if you're at the top, usually you don't make it to the top of the mountain without looking at yourself. But like, start practicing this so you do fall from the bottom of the mountain, than the top. Because like, if you're towards the top, halfway up, or whatever, wherever you want to go, and if you're doing really well and you haven't had any falls yet, that means you got a tall mountain.
Hang on.
And that's awesome. Your mountain's much taller than mine. Right. But like, that's a much farther fall. That's a lot more stones and things to hit.
Right. Think about like just Rome. Rome's like they were superpowers.
Yeah. They fell.
Right.
Like, how do you, like, you,
Man. So I do think putting boundaries in place, surrounding yourself with people who know, like, and love you, to be able to bring some of this stuff up. But then it takes a very strong person to be reflective and internalize and process through of like, yep, you're right. Like, I can do better.
That stuff's so hard.
It sucks.
It's like, it sucks so bad. Like, dude, I'm like, I don't know how much else to say. It just sucks. Like, but like, because we don't want to be wrong.
No.
Especially if you're taking the uncommon path of being a business owner.
Yeah, like, we wouldn't be where we're at without the failures.
Right?
So like, we're kind of like,
I know. That's why I am so in on this whole, you know, so Michael Jordan's one, like, he's shot more winning shots than anybody else, right?
Yep.
And I love, everyone always brings that up. I'm like, but what I hate is no one brings up, he's also missed
so many.
More than
he's made.
Yeah, more.
Sure.
He's missed more winning shots than any other player too. It's like, like, he's gotten back up. Like, I want to hear about people's failures.
Yeah.
Like, don't tell me how great you are. Tell me how you screwed up.
That's good. That's good.
Because like, to me, that shows me like,
that's going to be a podcast question I'm going to have for a guest. What's your biggest failure?
Yeah. How'd you screw up? What's your biggest screw up? Like, because that shows me like, oh my gosh, you've been at it. Because I remember talking about this, brings up when I was newer in the business. You know, like, us financial advisors, when we're newer, like, or any entrepreneur, you got to fake it. You know, like, oh, I'm super successful, you know. And when you get around another entrepreneur, you feel like you get to let your guard down a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I found out really quick that you could find some entrepreneur that had been through the grind. If they were successful, they're 20 years in or whatever, you could tell that they had gone through it themselves because
They would talk about it.
They would talk about it, but they were so general, like, "Hey, how you doing?"
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
no, because of course you give your normal stupid response, like, "Great." No, really, like, "How you doing?"
Stop the madness.
Yeah, and you're like, "Oh."
Not
I mean,
great.
I cried last night. And they're like, yeah, it's okay, man. Like, and then they tell you about their path.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like,
so
oh
good.
my God. And then you walk out of that meeting just like lit up and ready to tackle the day, you know, because you know you're not the only one. But then like you do find those guys like, hey, how was your like path? It's like, it was great. It's like, what was it? And then you find out like basically it's a trust fund baby that daddy gave him something. You're like, yeah, we didn't mesh, you know, but
So good.
yeah, failures they're amazing. They just suck.
They do. Well, thanks for tuning in. You've been listening to the Uncommon Wealth Podcast, and hopefully this gave you something to smile about.
Yeah.
And we're all in progress. We're all trying to figure it out. And so if you feel like you've had a failure, I would say, yeah, we all have.
Join the club.
Join the club, but what has it produced?
Yes.
And so you're on your own uncommon path. We're grateful that you're listening. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, go fail a little bit.
Go fail a little bit.
Go fail.
Join the elite group of failing.
That's right. Thanks for listening.
That's all for this episode, brought to you by Uncommon Wealth Partners. Be sure to visit uncommonwealth.com to learn more about our services. Don't miss an episode as we introduce you to inspiring people who are actively pursuing an uncommon life.